Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. So we're going to be starting our new series as promised, basically taking a deep dive into all the engine swaps within Gran Turismo 7. And up first we're going to review one of the latest additions and one that's kind of flown under the radar, the RSR engine that now goes in the 911 GT3 RS. So here's how we're going to break down this video. We're going to essentially get 4 different Porsches. We're going to have the 2 standard ones. So we're going to have one as a bog standard out of Brand Central. Then we are going to have another, again, out of Brand Central, but with the RSR swap in it. We're then going to test them out around the Nürburgring sprint layout to see which one produces the best time. I will also talk about some of the pros and cons of each engine whilst we are testing them out. Then we will get them both fully modified, so we'll have the non-engine swap with full modifications, all the kind of ultimate parts and stuff like that, same kind of racing tyres and such, and then we'll do the exact same with the RSR swap, and again we'll lap them, but this time it will be around the Barcelona no chicane layout, to basically see how they stack up against each other when fully modified. And again we'll talk about some of the pros and cons and if it's worth your time and effort. Now, in my opinion, this is one of the most underrated swaps currently within GT7, and it's not really being spoken about. So let's get straight into it. As you can see, this is the tuning sheet for the straight out of Brand Central 911 GT3 RS. This is the non-swap version, as you can see by the engine model. This is the MA 1.76-911, 491 brake horsepower, 627.60 pp, weighing 1,420 kilograms. Now let's move on next to the sheet for the engine swapped RSR version. So again, straight out Brand Central, no modifications, just putting the swap in it. As you can see by the engine model, this is the M97/80-911, 632.12 pp for this, 509 brake horsepower. As you can see, 4,000 cc now, weighing just a little bit more at 1,437 kilograms. And there you go, the sheet's bog standard for both. So let's go ahead and test out the standard Brand Central version. Again, no modifications, no swap on this one. This is just a bog standard 911 GT3 RS. So we're going to lap it and we're going to see how it gets on. So I did a bit of a recon lap just to kind of get used to it, but overall it was a 1 full lap attempt and that was it. Obviously a big mistake would have caused me to reset. We did have one of those with the RSR, however we did not with this version. So a few things to note about the standard version. The engine in this car, it will rev a lot higher. This one revs up to 9,000 RPM. It's a lot more reactive, I'd say, to be quite honest. It really is a pretty typical screaming Porsche engine. It's absolutely fantastic. It sounds glorious. The only thing I did notice that on exits of corners, it was almost rather quite weak. So although it was really quick out, it almost felt like it constantly wanted to kick. Whereas I actually felt like the RSR engine did the exact opposite. Now that does rev a lot lower than the standard engine that's in this car. Around about 1,000 RPM lower is kind of the optimum shifting range for that car. Whereas I found that the standard engine definitely wanted to just be revved higher, definitely into lower gears through some of the corners. Now in terms of the laps, I'm going to try and keep them very similar. I'm going to try and keep it off the curbs and such. I feel like that very much upsets the balance of this car whilst it's on its usual sports medium tyres and such. So we're going to try and keep away from the curbs, especially with the standard version because it's a lot more twitchy. And then we're going to go up across the line, and what time are we going to get? A 136.264. So let's head straight over to the RSR swapped 911 GT3 RS. So this was my second attempt. I didn't even manage to get around the full lap before I spun it right at the end. Twice I did do a recon lap and such to kind of get used to how the car felt and such. Now in terms of this engine, it's a lot more muted. Again, it revs ideally around about 1,000 RPM less than the standard engine. Overall, it felt better in terms of its weight. I actually found the weight of this car and kind of how it weight transfers and such was a lot better feeling than the standard version. Again, we are kind of, you know, up to 4,000 cc on the dot. It's a little bit heavier, and I honestly feel like you can feel just that slight little bit more weight in this car, but overall it felt very nice. It felt overall a cleaner drive in general, a really good handling car, and I honestly cannot fault this car. So if you are not going to modify it, I can all honestly say the RSR engine in a non-modified 911 GT3 RS really isn't that bad at all. Again, it does add weight, it adds a little bit more power, I believe, but overall it's really a decent engine swap for the standard version. But like I said, most of us aren't really going to keep them standard, let's be honest. So we're coming in towards the end of the lap. Again, the car felt much better in terms of getting it through the corners. However, on the brakes it did feel a little bit worse. I think that's the only downside I'd actually say. If you're not going to upgrade the brakes and such, you really want to be actually looking into doing that, because in standard with this engine in, it just definitely felt like the weight was just that little bit extra and caused you to brake a little bit earlier than with the standard engine. So 135.348 for the RSR swap. So let's go ahead and have a look at the leaderboard. As you can see, both running the SM tyres, so sports mediums. There's just under a second in it. The PP for the RSR swap is 632.12 as standard, and for the bog standard straight out the dealership car it is 627.60. so there's not much in it, but it has caused around about a second almost gap between both of them. Obviously a lot more muted in the RSR engine, it's a lot quieter, although I mean that's quite difficult to say about a Porsche, but naturally it is. It doesn't scream as much, it doesn't rev as high, but overall I felt the RSR engine was just kind of more refined. So let's move on next to the fully modified versions. This is going to be the one that doesn't have the swap. Again, full modifications. There is a few key differences though. So the fully modified non-swapped version is actually NA. There is no option to turbocharge or supercharge the engine, whereas the RSR swap does actually allow you to put a turbocharger on it. However, overall it does have less tuning parts than the kind of standard version that we're going to be running in this GT3 RS. I'm quite excited for this one because I honestly think it's going to be a pretty close showdown. So here we are. This is going to be the one that has the RSR swap on it. In terms of aero parts and such, we got them exactly the same. So same aero parts, same amount of downforce. Again, tuning sheets are going to be standard as you put the parts on. I'm not going to go ahead and modify them or tweak them or anything like that. So realistically, these cars are as close as they possibly can be. So yeah, overall, it's going to be a pretty big showdown to see which one is going to lap the fastest. So we're then going to move over to Barcelona, the no chicane layout, to see which one is going to go around the quickest. So just like previously, we are going to have the non-swapped version up first, and in all honesty this felt much quicker in a straight line. As you can see, almost just hitting over the 200 mile an hour barrier there on the main straight through the corners. Again, it felt very lightweight, very sketchy, but almost once you kind of get that handling down, it is a fantastic handling machine. I actually found, you know, the reduction in weight and such, because this car is eligible for, you know, stage 5 weight reduction, was actually more suited towards the non-swapped version than it was the RSR swap version. Overall, I would say that the lap, although it was a bit more on edge with the non-swap version, was certainly a lot cleaner and just overall felt a lot nicer. But there is a few downsides to running a non-swapped 911 GT3 RS, especially if you are going for a custom build, and the main one is fuel consumption. This thing absolutely drinks fuel. Although it's NA and obviously non-turbocharged and such, it still managed to absolutely consume fuel if you're trying to run it in those maybe grinding races, or you're going to take it into custom lobbies with fuel enabled. Be aware that this thing will absolutely drink it as soon as you start getting into those high performance numbers and kind of, you know, through the roof in terms of modifications. So overall though, the lap felt very clean. The car felt good, it was revving quite nicely, and to be quite honest, the sound of this thing is absolutely incredible. Listen to this as it goes over the line. So there we have it, it crosses in a 136.936. Now over to the RSR swap. Again, same aero and such like that. The only major change is that engine swap and which maximum upgrade parts we can get on it. Still eligible for stage 5 upgrades. As you can see, it's a little bit slower in a straight line, however it should be made up for with the ability to be able to short shift this. Obviously it's a race engine. If you've driven the original 911 RSR in kind of, you know, the group 3 and such, you would know what to expect and realistically how to work this engine to its maximum potential. It certainly wasn't as clean a feeling lap as that we had with the non-swapped version. I'd say honestly it was just a little bit more sketchy in terms of how it actually felt. It just didn't feel as clean. Overall though, it is a much more controllable engine. It really reacts well to short shifting. It felt like there was a lot more grip out of corners than there was with the 911 GT3 RS without the swap. But yes, overall this is definitely a more muted engine, but much more kind of, I guess, low end grunt in this one in terms of kind of the high revving standard version. So overall the lap wasn't perfect. Certainly still quick though, but again it does have the downside of not being as quick in a straight line. But the upside is the fuel consumption and just how it handles itself over an entire race. I would much rather have the RSR engine for a, you know, a longer period, say if I was racing for 30 minutes an hour and such, than I would actually, you know, over this standard version. It's just quite exhausting with how many changes you have to do in that other version, whereas this one, it likes to kind of, you know, stay around those short shifts. It reacts really well, and it's just a lot less tiring on you over a longer period of time, especially if you're playing with a wheel. So 136.359 as the RSR crosses the line. So let's have a look how they compare. As you can see at the top, this is going to be the RSR swap. It actually comes with less performance points overall than the non-swapped version. However, it did manage it in around about just under 6/10 quicker, even on a scruffier lap overall. So again, there you go. The RSR engine is absolutely awesome in this car. It does put out, I believe, a little bit more horsepower. It does still weigh a little bit more, but overall I'd just say it is a very, very worthwhile swap, and it is not that expensive, coming in at around about 300,000 credits, just over. So would I say this is worth it as my kind of first deep dive into some of these engine swaps? 100%. The price tag, the whole change to the car, the fact that you can then fully endurance race the 911 GT3 RS makes this swap massively worth it. So there we have it. That is the first video covering engine swaps within GT7. In terms of, you know, reviewing them all, I will try and get through them as best as possible. It might just take a while to be able to get, you know, different copies of each car. Obviously some of them go into used car dealers or legend cars, so it is going to be a, you know, a bit time consuming waiting for those to come around, but I will try and get through them all and give them a deep dive as much as possible and as soon as possible. So thank you so much for watching. In all honesty, this is one of the most underrated engine swaps currently within the game. It's fantastic. Is it better than when it goes in the 81 Turbo? To be honest, I'd say yes. It's just a better platform overall to build a kind of road car into a race car. And overall, I do feel like it is just better than the standard RSR if you're going for those more custom tunes. So I just want to say a big thank you to each and every one of you for watching this video. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you like this content, don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. Turn your notifications on so you don't miss an upload from me. I upload GT7 and motorsport related content each and every day for your viewing pleasure. Big thank you to Poggers and the Controller people for their continued sponsorship of the channel. They'll be down in the description down below if you want to kindly check those out. It'd be absolutely awesome. And an even bigger thank you to all of my channel members. If you do want to become a channel member and kindly, you know, donate towards the channel each month and, you know, kind of get involved when I get these membership perks worked out, that'd be absolutely awesome. I'll have my Twitter, my Discord and my donation link down in the description down below. I hope you all have a fantastic day. I'll have a money guide up later. Take care, guys. Peace.